happened. Tucker Carlson did interview Nick Fuentes. And, after calling him a Fed and all that kind of stuff. Some people say both of them are Feds. I don't know. But he did interview him. And there are a couple of parts I do want to touch on during this discussion. The first one, how Nick Fuentes got into, that space to begin with. This was shocking to me. I did not know how much Ben Shapiro was involved here. So let's go ahead and start with that. And then we're going to get to some of the things that he said about Israel as well.
I wrote a big article about this. I tweeted about it. I tweeted to Ben Shapiro. I said, I've never seen anything on the Daily Wire that's actually critical of Israel. And he quote tweets me. And at this time, I have 1,000 followers on Twitter.
How old are you?
I'm 18. I'm a freshman.
Still a freshman in college, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is even before I started my show. And I don't know, I probably got 100 likes on this tweet. It wasn't a viral tweet. He quote tweets me and says, to accuse a Jew of dual loyalty is the surest sign of anti-Semitism. And this is how it sort of begins. And I see this tweet. And by the way, that was on Christmas Eve in 2016.
He immediately called you an anti-Semite.
Mm-hmm. So I'm driving to Christmas Eve Mass with my family. And I see on Twitter, the notification comes up, Ben Shapiro quote tweets me, calling me an anti-Semite. And I was like, what is this? Why is this guy attacking me? Because I don't have a platform at this time. I'm not an influential guy or anything. And so then I put out another tweet, similar. I said something like, if you're China first, you should live in China. If you're Mexico first, you should live in Mexico. If you're Israel first, maybe you should go live in Israel. And again, he quote tweets me and says, you're an anti-Semite.
That same night?
This was, I think, a couple weeks later.
So in other words, it was Ben Shapiro that gave Nick Fuentes more attention by retweeting him and calling him anti-Semitic. That actually drew more eyes and attention to Nick Fuentes. Otherwise, that people may not have would have known of him. Let's continue.
Happened a little bit further down the line. And so...
Were you surprised that he knew you were?
Yeah, I was. I was surprised at why he cared.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, how does he even know who I am or what I'm about? And it turned out that Cassie Dillon, she had texted him earlier and she wanted him to take me under his wing. She texted him after that debate and said, you really like this guy. He's amazing. He did this great debate. She goes, but he's a little too pro-Trump. He's a little too Trumpy. And he goes, I'll take a look. And so I guess the two of them were kind of grooming me in a sense. They wanted me to go maybe and be a Daily Wire or maybe looking me as a potential conservative activist or influencer. And so they started paying attention to me. And the more critical of Israel I was, I started to get this really intense pushback from the both of them and from a lot of the people at Daily Wire.
Why do you think, so you're an 18-year-old college freshman, you're clearly talented and you're engaged, you're really interested, and you ask not crazy questions like, what is this? Mm-hmm. And rather than explain it, they just call you a racist, call you an anti-Semite. That's the first response. That seems like the least effective. Well, it turned out to be not very effective in your case, but that seems like the least effective thing you could do. Why do you think
they did that? So first of all, Tucker cracks me up sometimes because Tucker, I think you know the answer to this question. They do it because it works. It's a trick. It's an old trick that continues to work for whatever reason, although I think it's losing some of its steam, which is to smear people and to call them that because it works. They did it to Charles Barron when he ran against Hakeem Jeffries. They did it to Dr. Jill Stein. She's Jewish, by the way. They've done it to a number of people because they know it works. That's why they did it. But that part right there, I thought was pretty interesting, that it appears Ben Shapiro and them, I guess, were trying to get him over towards, the Daily Wire side of things. And it didn't work that way. All right. So let's get to the next part. because I thought this was pretty interesting. Now we get to the Israel conversation. One of the things I think that's been pretty interesting to me is that Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson alike, they say you shouldn't focus on identity politics. Let's not get into all that, right? But they still focus on identity politics. Like, it's just like, and that's what you're going to see. And it's like, more so, yeah, you don't focus on identity politics, but what Nick Fuentes is really telling you is not to focus on certain identities, right? Because he does focus on identity. I'm going to show you a flashback of when he sat down with Candace Owens, how he was the one who brings up identity. Let's get into this here.
Well, what about my views do you think are unreasonable if yours are reasonable?
I think, again, I don't think it's cucky. I think it's reality to say that guilt is not inherited. Blood guilt is bad. One of the reasons that I'm mad about Gaza is because the Israeli position is everyone who lives in Gaza is a terrorist because of how they were born, including the women and the children. That's not a Western view. That's an Eastern view. That's a non-Christian. That's totally incompatible with Christianity and Western civilization. They say, oh, we're the defenders of Western civilization. Not with that attitude. You're not. Collective punishment is the enemy of Western civilization.
Yeah.
And so I hate that attitude. It's genocidal. The current claims that I'm a cancer, from Ben Shapiro, whatever, we need to be excised from the body of conservatism is a genocidal position that it basically encourages violence, as they well know. The whole thing I hate. Mm-hmm. So like anytime you say a whole group of people is responsible for the sins of some of its members, like I'm out.
Yeah.
Nah, bruh. So here's the thing. It's interesting. Everyone has this clear conscience now all of a sudden, right? Tucker Carlson did that exact same behavior when he was a part of Fox News. Oh, yes, he did. There were different groups of people that he would choose to focus on from time to time. Now, Tucker Carlson, along with Rachel Maddow, they were able to argue in court that they weren't news, they were infotainment. But the reality is, he exactly did that. You did that. You chose to focus on groups and to make generalizations about these groups. Yes, you did. In fact, you had a whole career doing just that. But it's just funny, like now all of a sudden, oh, I have this epiphany. We can't generalize people. You generalized people for years on Fox. You did so. Yes. Yes. Now, Nick Fuentes says here that he agrees, right? But he also makes generalizations about groups of people, which you are going to see. Let's continue here.
But that's not my view.
It's not. Okay. So tell me your views. Like, rather than you're one of those people, one of the reasons I wanted to meet you is you're one of those people who is defined by clips.
Yes.
And I'm one of those people also.
Yes.
Right? So I get it. So I'm going to just shut up and you tell me what you actually believe.
Yeah. Well, and listen, and I appreciate you saying that because that's just the reality of the media environment we're in. So I don't expect you to know all my views, but as far as the Jews are concerned, I think that, like I said, you cannot actually divorce Israel and the neocons and all of those things that you talk about from Jewishness, ethnicity, religion, identity. And let me give you like a perfect example. So you say on your show that we need to treat Israel like any other country. And I sort of understand that in principle because Israel is another foreign country.
Yeah.
But Israel is unlike every other country in the sense that because the Jewish people are in a diaspora all over the world, there are significant numbers of Jews in Europe, but also in the United States. And because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people, they're unassimilable, they resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel. There's a deep religious affection for the state. It's bound up in their identity, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the promise of the land, all these things. So let's say in the United States, for example, somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. Is he an ideological neocon? Does he believe in the promise of democratic globalism? I don't think necessarily. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. And
pause. This is the problem. Nick Fuentes is conflating Judaism with Zionism, right? And I'll show you a comparison in just a second. So you can't compare everybody to Sheldon Adelson. We have to remember, when I went to cover the campus protests, a lot of the students who were out there protesting for Gaza were Jewish students. A lot of them, anti-Zionist Jewish students. When we went to the Boston pro-Palestinian protests, the ones in DC, a lot of the people who were out there were people who were anti-Zionist Jews. So this is the danger with the conflating the two. And I got to be very clear about this, ladies and gentlemen. There is a difference between Judaism and Zionism. I have had a number of people come onto this show over the years that have really broke this down, right? So he brings up the religion aspect. So let me get to that example, and then I'll come back to what Nick is saying here. Katie Halper, she came on. This was, I think, right after October 7th. Katie Halper came on and she explained this so well. Katie Halper is a great example to point to. You know why? Katie Halper she doesn't practice Judaism. So she's not religious, but she is ethnically Jewish. Listen to what Katie said here.
Again, I don't think Netanyahu is particularly religious, and a lot of the founders of Israel weren't religious. So I don't think it's a religious conflict. I think a lot of people who don't want to look at the historical material context want to pretend, oh, this is just a religious thing, and they've been fighting for thousands of years. And no, it's not that. And Jews and Muslims have coexisted in many instances. This is not about incompatible religions. This is about people being expelled from where they were. It's about ethnic cleansing. And it's about weaponizing what really was a tragedy and really was a horror, which is the Holocaust. And before that, the pogroms. What's so sad is that it weaponizes those things to ethnically cleanse other people. That's what's so upsetting. And I think what we're seeing are lots of Jews saying, not in my name. And our Jewish identity says, speak out against this. Never again is now. I went to a protest on Friday, arranged by Jewish Voice for Peace, and if not now. And it was really moving. And there were a bunch of Jews who were saying, never again is now, ceasefire now. They see this as part of their Jewish identity, speaking out precisely because of what happened to their families.
So Katie Halper, number one, I am never wearing that sweater again. I didn't realize what it looked like on camera, and I'm never dyeing my hair that color again. Never, never, never. But Katie Halper is a good example to point to, right? Because Katie Halper, obviously, strong ally for the pro-Palestinian movement. She's Jewish, she's anti-Zionist, but she doesn't practice Judaism. So Nick Fuentes, and someone already pointed it out in the chat. I'll go back to it in just a second here. Nick Fuentes is conflating the two. And yes, FM said he's intentionally conflating the two. Right. Because then what happens is you have people making that generalization about all Jewish people, and that is not the case. Most of the Zionists, especially here in the United States, are Christian Zionists. So this is where a lot of this comes from, and it is important that we make that distinction. Now, let's go ahead and continue on here a little bit.
And I guess what I'm saying is that if you are a Jewish person in America, you're sort of, and again, it's not because they're born, but it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. This is not really my home. My ancestral home is in Israel. There's like a natural affinity that Jews have for Israel. And I would say on top of that, for the international Jewish community. They're extremely organized, and many of them are critical of Israel or Israel's current government or the project of Israel. But I guess what they have in common, unlike, let's say, like Singapore, for example, is that they have this international community across borders, extremely organized. that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country. And there's no other country that has a similar arrangement like that. No other country has a strong identity like that, this religious blood and soil conviction, this history of being in the diaspora, stateless, wandering, persecuted, and in particular, the historic animosity between the Jewish people and the Europeans.
So here's another problem, right? Israel is a secular state. Israel is not a religious state. It is secular, right? 2, there are Palestinian Jews in Israel as well. So this is a big part of the argument, which Tucker Carlson doesn't say this. He doesn't push back on him and say what I just told you, that Israel is not a religious state. When Nick Fuentes makes these arguments, it gives people the impression who are not aware of the situation or not maybe as knowledgeable of the situation. It can give them the impression that Israel is a religious state, and it's not. Benjamin Netanyahu is not even religious. It's a secular state. Let's go on a little bit more here.
They hate the Romans because the Romans destroyed the temple. That's why Eric Weinstein goes to the Arch of Titus and gives it the finger and takes a picture. We don't think like that as Americans and white people. We don't think about the Roman Empire in 2,000 years ago. They do. And so I guess that's really, and I don't think that's me saying the Jews. I don't think that's me being hateful. I don't think that's me being collectivist. I think that's understanding that identity politics, whether you love it or hate it, whatever you feel about it, it's a reality that we live in a world of Jews and Christians, of whites and blacks. These identities mean something to us and they mean things to each other, and we can't sort of wish them away. And it feels like white people and Christians are the only ones that do that.
There's no question.
So do everybody see what he is doing, right? So you got to be very careful. And I see a lot of people falling for this. What Nick Fuentes is doing is this whole idea of, oh, let's not focus on identity and let's just da-da-da. But he is focusing on identity. He just doesn't want you to focus on those identities that he's referring to. So that is something I've been pushing back on for quite some time. A number of them. It's not just Nick Fuentes, but all these people say, Ben Shapiro, don't talk about identity. No identity politics. Facts don't care about your feelings. Who spent a lot of time talking about identity? Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro. So people have to pay attention to the game that is being played here. This whole, no, we don't really want to get into identity or anything like that. But, so then he gets into identity. And I want to give you an example. When Nick Fuentes interviewed Candace Owens, right? Or when she interviewed him, excuse me. Watch who brings up the identity. Here we go.
If you are, do you attend the mass?
I do.
Do you go every Sunday?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so you're like a committed Catholic. Then obviously, the perspectives on family. I mean, I personally, and this would be me lecturing, but I just feel like you really have no idea who you are until you start a family. And whether that means just marriage, some people who are struggling to have children, okay, fine. But there's such a growth that happens because of that I think it informs your beliefs in so many ways. And I think that was a huge turning point for me. Like, I wonder if I had been pressed with everything that happened last year, if I didn't have like the unshaken faith and my family, what would I have done? And sometimes when I see the things that you say, I do think, okay, he doesn't take into account family. Like, it's just Nick. Nick is in his own world, which can be, I think, a quite selfish perspective, which is fine. That's what you're saying. You like being selfish is another way to say what you just said. I like being selfish and I don't want to give of myself to somebody else. But
I also think
and I'll even say, I don't agree with what Candace is saying here. I don't think you have to be married or start a family to fully discover who you are as a person, right? But listen to the response.
there's something selfless involved, which is to say, I could go and start a family and drag them into a world of mine, which is pretty chaotic. I mean, is this really the kind of a lifestyle? If I'm banned on everything and I can't make a living, I'm banned from banking, I'm banned from credit card processing, I'm getting doxxed, people are showing up to my house trying to kill me, things like that. And what's more, I mean, let's also get, I also don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me, so I know you're married. I know you're older than me, but you don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know my situation. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman, honestly. I don't think women, this is something in the right wing. We say we're anti-feminist, and then women go around telling men what to do. We're not.
So again, look who brings up identity, right? So does everybody see the game that Nick Fuentes plays? We'll take it back a little bit more here because I cut it off.
Wing, we say we're anti-feminist, and then women go around telling men what to do. We're not their husbands. And, I don't really buy into that ideologically, but that's besides the point. My life has been tumultuous from the very beginning.
If you are
So does everybody see that little game there? Like, he could have disagreed with what she said without bringing, oh, you're a woman. The people who keep saying don't talk about identity keep talking about identity. Imagine that. So this is a big part of the game, right? So Nick Fuentes sits there right in front of Tucker Carlson. He conflates Judaism with Zionism. It's not the same thing. Zionism is a supremacist ideology. Zionism was created by Theodore Herzl. Theodore Herzl was not religious. So they're not the same. But to FM's point, he's doing that on purpose. Let's hear the part about weed. I think some of you appreciate this. Let's get into the part here about the weed.
It's interesting. Your audience, as I imagine it, I've never seen any of your numbers. I don't even know how big your audience is. It seems big to me, but I think of them as young men.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bulk of your audience, right?
Yes.
And yet here you are criticizing weed and video games and the internet, and you work on the internet. You are a creation. I mean, you wouldn't exist without the internet, of course. You didn't get a job at NBC News. So what kind of reaction do you get when you criticize weed, gaming, and the internet to young men?
A lot of them agree with it because they get it. It's their life. A lot of them, that's their life. Their life is, and another thing we didn't even bring up is the porn thing, which is there also. This is their life. Weed, gaming, porn. And I think they know it's bad. I think they know there's like some sense of guilt. And so it's interesting. I would say it's maybe an 80-20 split where 20% say, oh, you're against weed? Not cool, man. It's just a plant. Well, they're very defensive about these addictions. And I think 80% say, I know I have a problem. Like I have a guilty conscience. I know it's bad. I know it's terrible.
Why are you against weed?
Because I think that it's compromises the integrity of your mental faculties. I think there's something deeply wrong with that. When you, I'm against alcohol too. I think it's wrong to numb pain. I think pain is a part of life. I think
So I think he's referring to people who abuse it, right? So there's one word that's missing from all of this, and that's moderation, right? I don't smoke. It's not my thing. Tried it a couple times. I don't really appreciate having munchies. It's me. It's not my thing. I didn't like the way that it made me feel. But I do know people that do. And I know people that smoke, and they don't smoke every day. They might smoke every now and then, maybe on the weekend, or maybe like once a month, or maybe after an event or something like that. Moderation. Same thing with alcohol. You can have a drink, right? There's a difference between having a drink on a Friday night and having a drink every day. So the key thing there is moderation. And I'm very against like this all or nothing approach where it's like, you can't do any of that because if you do this, then you're going to end up like this and da-da-da-da. Remind me of that movie called Reefer Madness. Like back in the day, like people smoked weed and all of a sudden they got really like excited and anxious and crazy and all that from weed. Everyone I have seen smoke weed either got the munchies or was chill as hell. So that's the thing. It's like moderation, but this all or nothing approach. And this is what I said before when I was a part of the Pentecostal church. They had that same type of mindset, this all or nothing approach. You can't watch TV because it's the devil. Don't play video games because that's also the devil. Girls don't wear pants because that means you're like a Jezebel from the Bible days. Don't wear jewelry or makeup because of that same reason. Is like they always take it there. So that's why You know, when I told you guys, I said I had to get up out of there, the people's crazy. That's why. That all or nothing approach. And there is a such thing as moderation, which they don't bring up. He doesn't bring it up, and Tucker Carlson doesn't bring it up.
Sobriety is like, should be experienced. And I think that weed is even worse because I think that, one, it's very dangerous. There's a lot of numbers now out of like California and Washington that people are going to the hospital for psychosis. People are going crazy because of it.
It's also more subtle and therefore more insidious. Like you can't, I've done it. If you have a 12-pack for breakfast, like everyone knows. But if you take a hit of the dab pen, like nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it all the time.
Yeah. And it makes you a loser. It makes you lazy. You know, people that are addicted to weed are not motivated, don't care about anything other than weed. You know, there's sort of like an irony there where I used to hang out with a lot of stoners in high school. I never smoked weed, but all my friends did. And they were so chill and relaxed and didn't care about anything. But if you criticized weed, they would freak out and get extremely defensive.
Yes, I've noticed.
Right? If you insinuate that it's addictive, if you say it's a problem, they get very like junkie behavior.
So again, I think there's a difference between someone that has an addiction and someone that is doing that in moderation. That's like, you can't make this assumption that like everybody that smokes weed is addicted to weed. That is not the case. Just like everyone that drinks alcohol isn't addicted to alcohol. So it's just, to me, it's just ridiculous. That all or nothing approach. You got to go all the way over there or it's nothing. It's just bizarre to me. It's wild. Weed is a plant. It's just like, so it's a plant. It's a plant. So, and that's one of the things that worries me, right? Is like, there are things that weed has been used for to help people. Yes, there is medical marijuana for a reason. And it's weird to me that that's not mentioned. Other ways that it's used. So it's just, the Fed behavior, right? Conflating Judaism with Zionism. Saying that, and his fan club, like Nick's like cronies, his fan club and stuff like that, they'll go into people's shows and say, bring him on. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. But they finally had that conversation. And it's just hilarious to me because Tucker Carlson called him a Fed. But a lot of people are seeing this and they're like, they're both Feds. I understand, like they're both Feds, right? So for me, I think that it is important that people don't conflate Judaism with Zionism. I think it's important to correct that. I don't agree with the things that he said about weed, and I don't even smoke weed, right? So I'm someone who doesn't even smoke it, and I can call these things out. There is a thing about moderation. And 3, it is interesting that as much as Ben Shapiro criticizes Nick Fuentes, it was him retweeting him that actually made people discover who he was in the first damn place. When you say, how did this happen? That's how it happened. It all goes back to Ben Shapiro. Everything goes back to the Daily Wire. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.